Excellent. Muchas gracias, Eduardo. So our next presenting company is MEDIPOST America, and here to tell us the story is Antonio Lee, who's the CEO and Managing Director.
Will do. All right, thank you. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Tony Lee. I'm from a company called MEDIPOST. We are a Korean-based company. I was just going to give a brief high-level overview and bit of introduction about the company, as well as a lead indication product that we actually have in the market. So the company is established in year 2000, based in South Korea, Seoul. And the founder CEO, she's actually clinical pathologist, hematologist. We started off as a private cord blood bank. We still operate the largest cord blood bank in Korea. And the company in Korea is public with just under $500 million US dollar market cap in KOSDAQ. And when we started the company in 2000, started doing the R&D programs using donated cord blood. So those ones that we actually save for the private customers, then they're saved as a private cord blood units. But when we get the donated cord blood units, we actually do the manufacture and commercial manufacture for the allogenic stem cells. And the first product that's approved by Korean FDA 2 years ago is the product called CARDISTEM for cartilage repair and osteoarthritis. I'll give you the clinical data about that later. And we have other products as well. And the company has spun out a U.S. company we now represent about less than 2 years ago, and it's a 100% owned subsidiary of the parent company. The mandate is that we do equity financing and investor invitation to this vehicle, that we get the exclusive rights to clinically develop the assets of the parent company for the regional jurisdictions of all the Americas as well as EU. So just a quick diagram, autologous versus allogenic. Everybody in this room should know allogenic coming from unrelated donors. So this is a universal donor system. We, unlike other groups or companies using bone marrow-derived or fat-derived MSCs, we use cord blood-derived MSCs as our donor material. So the lead indication or lead product is CARDISTEM, as I mentioned to you, for degenerative osteoarthritis. I'll give you some clinical data on that. This has been approved by Korean FDA under biologics license application, which is very similar to the US FDA and EMA framework. So an allogenic product is on the market. It's been on the market for about a year and a half. And the same product is under phase 1/2A clinical trials in the US with the US FDA IND. And the second product, which I'm not going to talk about, is called Neurostem. This is for pediatric lung indication called bronchopulmonary dysplasia. This is for prematurely born babies. They have difficulty breathing. Their lung goes fibrotic. So we finished successfully phase 1, and it was published a couple of months ago in Korea, and is about 75% completion of phase 2 trial in Korea at the moment, which we anticipate going to orphan drug designation. The same product we're discussing with the US FDA for the IND at the moment. It has been designated a few months ago as an orphan indication for BPD in the US. The last product in the pipeline is called Neurostem. This is for Alzheimer's disease. We have successfully finished phase 1 in Alzheimer's mild to moderate AD patients in Korea. We just got an IND clearance by the Korean FDA for phase 2 trial, which will begin end of this year. And the same goes for the US development. So just quick, really high-level overview of the manufacturing process. Donated material, which is cord blood, comes in. We do the eligibility test, and this is separation and culture and large expansion to a aliquots. And at this stage, we can store these cells, and we term them drug substance. And this is the nice thing about the allogenic model, is that we can pre-manufacture and have an off-the-shelf model. And then when we get the prescription, for instance, for the approved product in Korea, we do a 5-day manufacturing and release, and this released product, which is stable between 4 to 20 degrees Celsius and stable for 48 hours in that ambient temperature, and that's used within basically 2 days in the clinics. And the IP situation, these are the issued patents around various parts of the world, and we've actually been getting quite generous amount of some 26 million US dollars from public funding sources. So this is the first ever allogenic product that was approved by any regulator in the world, and it was followed by the Prochymal Osiris, Prochymal by Health Canada several months after this, which was January 2012, and we launched our product on market in Korea 6 months after that. So just a quick demographics of the patient population of the OA. Everybody should know this is a very big market. Really, the highlights here is the patient demographics that are above the age of 55 or 65, and these age groups, there's a high increase in good proportions, and there's a good reason why I highlight that, and I'll show you in a couple of slides down the road. The Korean market obviously is a relatively small market, but the whole point here is that some less than 1/10 of the US market as far as the knee joint surgery is concerned. But the point here is that it's on a very steep, a relatively steep growth curve in any market you look into. So a cartilage defect can be classified in general by 4 grades, basically classified by the orthopedic surgeons at this society, ICRS. And the grade 4 is the worst type of lesion where you can actually see the bare bone. And these are the type of lesions that will typically be presented in the patients with the OA, osteoarthritis. And we actually enrolled all the patients for our phase 3 randomized controlled trial, which was the basis of our Korean approval with all the grade 4 lesion patients. The current standard of care, there are a couple of options. One is procedure known as microfracture, where it's basically drilling through holes here and then let the bone marrow bleed out from underneath. That can lead to some level of regeneration, but is only efficacious for patients under the age of 50, 55. And as you may know, the total replacements, the TKO, partial knee replacements, these are the artificial joints or metal caps, implants that can actually basically be surgically implanted here and cover the whole surface. The downside of this is extremely invasive, and also they have limited lifespan of 10, 12 years. So the surgeons would actually deliberately postpone if you're not old enough to get these surgical procedures done. And then, of course, there's companies such as Tygenix, which you have actually heard before this talk, and Genzyme now, Sanofi company, doing autologous chondrocyte implantation. It's basically taking patients' own tissue out, taking them out, grown into cell types that make chondrocytes, which are the cartilage-making cells, bring it back in the second visit, and they implant them, patients' own cells. And they have limitation that the size of the defects have to be small, and also they're limited by the patient's age. So we deliberately included, the yellow bars here indicate the patient ages, groups of patients that are enrolled, subject to enroll for our phase 3 randomized control trial that was conducted now some 4 years ago in Korea. And it shows that we deliberately targeted the patient pool between the ages roughly 50 to 70, 75. The reason being the microfracture current intervention care, as I mentioned to you, is only efficacious for patients under the age of 50, 55. And artificial knee joints, as I said, that surgeons would deliberately postpone the time point for these patients to undergo the total knee replacement because they can only last 10, 12 years. So if you can actually show efficacious endpoint for these patients group here, then we can obviously cover the entire age group there. So this is what the product looks like. The resolution is there. This is purpose of the contrast. You can see the cells at the bottom. 7.5 million cells are released in over 1 vial. A second component, which is hyaluronic acid, this biopolymer widely used. They get combined at the OR into viscous gel mix and very malleable, and they are surgically applied through a minor arthrotomy, which is open surgery or arthroscopic surgery. So this is one of the phase 1-2 patients actually. We treat ICRS grade, very large lesion. You can see the bare bone. The surgical application involves the drilling of small holes using a conventional drill, and then this gel is applied into the holes and then covered on top surface. And then you can see the regrowth of cartilage, and then this is long-lasting cartilage repair. I'm not going to show you the detailed the data on this clinical trial, but we've actually looked at the biopsy samples of these patients to confirm that they make hyaline-like cartilage, not fibrous, if that's interest to you. So I will show you a quick, this is again a very rough diagram or schematic of a mechanism of action. So the chondrocytes in a patient where they got damaged cartilage, worn-out cartilage here, they do still have the chondrocytes and or progenitors to chondrocytes. And our cells, when they implanted it here, this is the paracrine action they've been hearing all day, that these cells, once they're implanted, and instead of integrating there, they simply stay there, release the proteins in response to the injury factors that are surrounded, and then really stimulating and activating the patient's own cells or chondrocytes that actually create now then cartilage matrix, which is extracellular matrix. And then after a period of time, the cells actually get digested and leave the system. And we had to show that very extensively to both the FDAs in the Korea and also US. So what I do want to share about this phase 3 data is that the same patients were followed up for long-term analyses. This is a 3-year follow-up data that we've just recently gotten end of last year for this phase 3 patients. Again, single treatment and then followed up on 36 months time point. First safety endpoint was to see if there's any abnormal tissue growth or tumorigenic activities by T2 mapping of MRI. There's no safety issues, but more importantly, we're looking for 100 millimeter VAS, which is pain score, as well as functional scores. So you can see here from the baseline, at 1 year time point, we get improvement in these patients, both in the treatment group and in the microfracture control group, but we couldn't show superiority. And 2 years later, now that the microfracture group of patients get back to worse state, and then the Cardiostem group of patients remain with that improved functional efficacy. Another functional scoring system called IKDC shows the higher the score, the better. This is a starting point at the time of treatment, and 1 year they improve, and in Cardiostem's case, the patients actually stay or maintain their improved state, and then the microfracture goes back down to the worst state again, which is quite well known in the literature. And this is actually on market data that we've been getting from the market now. One particular patient with 4.5 years of microfracture, she's actually late 40s. The VAS score is from 0 is no pain, 100 is actually unbearable pain, and you can see 65. This particular patient went on to second microfracture, still after 6 months, get about 50 score points on the 100 millimeter VAS. We did the Cardiostem treatment after 6 months, and then the pain scores going down. You can see the cartilage repair, which was not being able to be achieved after microfracture treatment. So this has been, as I said, approved by Korean FDA and is undergoing currently in US FDA trial for the repetitive and or traumatic cartilage defect or degeneration, including degenerative osteoarthritis. And there is no age limit above the age of 18 because we have included good portion of our subjects included in that 50 to 70 age cohort as well. This has been co-developed with the Samsung Medical Center in Korea, their Department of Orthopedics. So the Korean market status that, as I said, about 2 years ago it was approved, and so far, the beginning of this month, we've done over 1,000 product releases for about 960 now or so patients, and it's available across 136 hospitals. And we are mandated by the Korean FDA to do 600 patient post-market surveillance, which is actually going on at the moment. And the domestic licensee is a pharmaceutical company called Dongha Pharmaceuticals in Korea. Australian market, we've closed a deal with a local partner for licensing, and we anticipate to actually apply for market approval application end of this year. So as in Canada, hope to launch for their product application early next year as well. And there are some opportunities that in Central and South American markets, such as Mexico and Ecuador, where they recognize approvals coming from regulators in Korea. So we look to actually enter in that market pretty soon. So we're in a little bit of a unique position where our parent company in Korea provided not only a proof of concept preclinical, but also a very strong clinical efficacy and data that's coming out. And we transfer that right to the entity that I'm involved in the US with an effort to actually clinically develop that with local investor interest, hopefully in the North American region as well as the EU. Thank you very much for your attention, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions later.